Masechet Hagigah, Daf Chaf He. We begin with the Mishnah on the bottom of Chaf Dalid Amud Bet that starts Chomer Bateruma. The previous Mishnah was all about 11 ways in which Kodesh, sacrificial meat or oil or wine that's donated to be used in the Bet HaMikdash, is treated with more stringency than Terumah, which makes sense because it's more holy, it's more susceptible to tumah, and therefore there's all kinds of stringencies that the rabbis added onto kodesh. However, there are also some ways in which terumah is actually more stringent, and the logic here is that because kodesh is so important, people, especially Amei Haaretz, actually will be more careful with kodesh, whereas terumah, precisely because it's less holy, less important, Amei Haaretz will tend to be more careless with terumah. So let's see the ways in which terumah is more stringent. Shebihuda ne'emanin al taharat yain v'shemen kol yemot hashana. In Judea, not in the Galilee, the Talmud will explain why, but in Judea, Amei Haaretz are trustworthy regarding the purity of wine and oil all year round if they say that this is kodesh. Right, we designated this to be used as wine libations or oil for mincha. Then they are trustworthy that they are kept it at that highest level of tahara, because even Amei Haaretz in Judea are trustworthy. Now, all year round, they are not trusted regarding terumah, because terumah, it's a lower level. Amei Haaretz don't treat it so carefully, except for the time of the pressing. When it's time for the wine press and for the olive press, when they're going to make wine and oil out of it, then they go and gather together all their vessels, and they purify the vessels, because you always want to start off the season in a good way, like the first day of school. You want to make sure to be everything to be good and have your pens and pencils sharpened, and so even Amei Haaretz at the time of the pressing was going to be a lot of oil and wine. They are make sure to keep things tahor. It's only then once the press is over, then they become lax. So therefore, we can trust Amei Haaretz regarding terumah during the pressing season, but regarding kodesh, we trust them all year round. And so there you go. You see that terumah is more stringent than kodesh. Okay, next case. Avru hagitot v'abatim v'abiu lo chabit shel yayin shel terumah lo yikabelena mimena aval manicha legat haba'ah. Let's say Amei Haaretz has a barrel of something, and now he didn't give it to a chaver. He has a barrel of terumah, and he did not get to give it to a kohen who's a chaver during the wine press. If he had it gave it to him during the press, then he would be accepted. But now that time passed. So what should he do with this barrel of terumah? Well, he can leave it, right? Just put it in storage until the next time around, until the next pressing season comes. It's really the kohen may not accept it at that if it's not during the time of press. But if the Amei Haaretz leaves it in his storehouse until the next season and then takes it out, well, now it's this time of press. So even though this actually was pressed last year, doesn't matter. The kohen can accept it because it is the pressing season now. It's kind of like, sometimes you go to Macy's and so they tell you this will be on sale if you come back next week. So what do you tell them? I can't buy it now on sale. I say, hold it, right? Put it on hold for me. I'll come back next week and then I'll buy it on sale, right? So that's the same thing here, even though it's the very same item that I'm going to acquire later on when the press comes again. And nevertheless, if I accept it now, no good. I can't trust him. At the time of the wine press, I can. If the Amei Haaretz tells him, listen, I have this barrel, it's mostly terumah, but I designated one revi'it of it to be kodesh. Now, if he's giving it over to him, giving or selling, you have to tell the receiver that there is some kodesh. I donated some to be kodesh. So now the receiver will have to make sure eventually, it doesn't matter which part of it's all mixed up, but eventually when he opens it up, he'll have to take a revi'it of the wine or oil and donate it to the Bet HaMikdash as kodesh, and then the rest of it will be non-kodesh, will just be teruma. And so in this case, because there's a mixture here of kodesh along with teruma, and we said that the Ama Aretz is believed regarding kodesh, so therefore, since he's regarded, we believe him, we trust him that he kept the highest level of tahara, because there's some kodesh in it, and therefore we can trust him regarding the entire barrel, because it's all mixed up. And so therefore we can accept the teruma also all year round. So this is a good way, just wanted to eat of kodesh, and we know that he will keep it tahor. Next case, kadeh yayin vechadeh shemen, the Mishnah says. This apparently, if you just read it plainly, it's referring to the actual jugs themselves. Not clear if they're full or not full. Hamedumaot, that are mixed together. Ne'emanin alehem bishat hagitot v'habadim vekodem lagitot shiv'im yom. They're mixed together. We'll see what that means. In Ama Aretz is believed regarding them during the wine press and the olive press, and even 70 days before. Okay, so the Talmud will discuss what is the law about empty vessels, but it's going to decide in the end that this is actually talking about barrel jugs that are mixed with tevel, which is teruma. Teruma was not taken yet, and the potential kodesh. In other words, he intends to take some kodesh out of it. He didn't actually designate kodesh from it yet, but he says, I intend to. So because it is a mixture of intended kodesh with tevel, therefore we trust the Ama Aretz not only during the wine press, but also 70 days before. Not all year round, because it's not actually kodesh in it, but 70 days before, when you already start preparing for the press, is already trustworthy then. All right, so lots of interesting cases and a lot of juicy topics to discuss. And we start off with this question: Bihuda'in b'Galilean my ta'ama. Why do we trust Amei Haaretz only regarding kodesh, only in Judea in the south, but not in the Galilee in the north? What's the difference? Resh Lakish explains, because between the two settlements of Jews is a strip of land where the Samaritans live. The Samaritans come from Shomron because they live up north. They are a remnant of the northern 10 tribes mixed together with other nations that join them. They believe only in Chumash, that they take literally, and not Nevi'im Ketuvim, certainly not Torah Shebe'al Peh. So there are, for some rabbis consider them as converts and Jewish for some matters, some not. The Talmud calls them kutim, which is a derogatory term, saying they are from Kuta, a foreign land. They are in fact foreigners. Okay, whatever their status regarding different halachot, when it comes to burial, they are like non-Jews. Non-Jews are not careful to bury their dead in a proper manner and mark the grave. Whereas in a Jewish cemetery, you'd have to mark the graves so that Kohanim know, or anybody knows, there's a grave here, and don't walk on it. Otherwise, one will become tameh. But non-Jews and Samaritans are not careful with that. And therefore, here's the problem. If someone has some oil or wine up in the north and they say, this is going to be Kodesh, and then they travel with it, because what are you going to do with Kodesh? You have to take it to Jerusalem. So they travel with it. They're going to have to pass through the land of the Samaritans. And as they're passing through, even if they don't touch anything, there may be an unmarked grave somewhere where they're walking. Especially, on roads. Sometimes people die on roads. And what are you going to do? They're buried on the side of the road. And so they may walk over it, and a body causes tent impurity. And if they are walking over it, then they and the Kodesh that they are holding will become tameh. And that's why we cannot trust an Ama Aretz, as careful as he is. If he's coming from the north, he necessarily passed through this tameh land as he got to the south. And that's why we do not trust the Kodesh that comes from the north. Okay, now we have a couple of challenges. Isn't there some way? There are ways to transfer something. How about the people in the north will take this wine and oil and put it into a large box, chest, or closet? And the halacha is not a little box, but a big one, like an armoire. If it's big enough, it's considered its own tent, its own separate realm. And therefore, if you put it in there and carry it over, then the tent impurity will not enter the box. It will be shielded. So why can't we assume that they put it in a box and carried it over? Since Ame'aretz, they might not know everything, but they will be careful with Kodesh and they'll do that. And our answer is Hamani, who is the author of our Mishnah? It must be Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbihi. Ohel Zaruk, Lav Sheme Ohel. He has, his opinion says that a flying tent is not a tent. The point is that even if it's a tent or a box or a closet that's moving, then that's no good. Only if it's stationary, then it protects from tumah. It's its own place. But if it's moving, then it's already not a realm, not its own space by definition, because it's moving. Let's see the source of Rabbi. The Tanya nichnas le'eretz ha'amim b'shida teva u'migdal Rabbi metameh. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda metaher. If someone enters non-Jewish land in a box, chest, or closet, which could include a wagon or a car or a train or an airplane that's going over it. All these are moving boxes. The B says tameh, right? If it was stationary and the stationary thing happened to be on top, then yeah, that would protect. But if it's moving, then no good. And so therefore, that's why anything that comes from the north, we assume is tameh, because even if it's in a box, a moving box, it does not protect. There's another opinion, but it must be our Mishnah that says no good is Rabbi. All right, how about another way that we can try to get a transfer of Kodesh through this Tameh land? I know we can take this Kodesh oil or wine and put it into an earthenware vessel that is sealed tightly and tied up. Because an earthenware vessel, if it's tahor, it does protect against tent impurity from coming in. And so I'll put it in there and then carry it across. So that's a good idea, right? Well, not necessarily. Amarabi Eliezer Shonin and a Kodesh Nisol Besamid Patil. We have a braita that this earthenware trick works for other things, other types of like terumah, but not for Kodesh. So here's a stringency. Kodesh, unlike other items, cannot be protected by a sealed earthenware vessel. So sorry, not good enough. Hold on, we have a contradiction to that baraita that would seem to say it's permitted. This baraita says that hatat, that means para aduma, ashes, are not protected from impurity in a sealed earthenware vessel. Now, how come it said specifically chatat? My lab hakodesh nisol. Sounds like we can infer from here that only paraduma ashes are not protected, but sacrificial food is protected. And so this would be a good way. And why? So if we could do this and get it from the north to the south. And we say, Lo ha-mayim she'enan mikudashim nisud besamid patil. When this baraita mentions specifically chatat, the reason why I specified that is to say the actual ashes of chatat cannot be shielded, but water that is not yet designated, consecrated to be used for paraduma, but will be, right? I'm saying I'm planning on using this water to mix with the ashes. That is sufficient. I can put it in an earthenware vessel and it will protect from tent impurity. So that's why I specified chatat as opposed to the water that will be used for me chatat. And so we cannot learn anything regarding Kodesh from this baraita. And so we go back to this that says that the earthenware vessel trick does not work for Kodesh, and that's why you can't get it from the north to the south. One last challenge. V'amar Ula, chavraya medakan beglila. Ula said that the chaverim, right, those who are strict with impurity in the north, they would prepare some of their oil and wine to the level of sacrifices in the north. Well, now what are they going to do with it? Obviously, they're going to take it from the north. They have to bring it to the Beit HaMikdash in order to use it. So they must have some way of getting from the Galilean to Judea. So therefore it should be allowed, and we should trust Ameharetz too. And the final answer is Manichin. No, the people in the Galilee, they don't transfer it to Jerusalem. Instead, they leave it there in storage, and they hope one day Eliyahu Hanavi will come soon, and Eliyahu will figure out a way of transferring it from north to the south. He'll solve that problem, and they hope that Eliyahu will come soon enough before this wine goes bad. And that actually makes sense. Ula lives in Amorah. He lives way after the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed. So it makes sense that he probably is referring to maybe contemporaries who, even though there's no Bet HaMikdash, they want to have keep some things to the level of purity as if it was Kodesh. But what are they going to do with it? Well, they have to leave it until Eliyahu comes. And therefore, that explains the Mishnah. And that's why only Amei Haaretz in the south are trusted. But those in the north, as trustworthy as they may be, they have no way to transfer it to the south. And therefore, we have to assume it became Tameh on the way. Good. Next clause in the Mishnah, B'shat hagitot nemanin af al hateruma. Regarding teruma, we have a stringency here that we do not trust Amei Haaretz all year round, but we do trust them during the time of the press. Urmin hi hagomer zetav yeshayed kupa achat v'tenena le'ani kohen. We have a seeming contradiction from the following teaching, Baraita, that says someone who finishes harvesting his olives should leave one basket of olives on the side and don't press them, and give them to a poor Kohen so that the Kohen can take the olives and the Kohen will press them in purity, because the Kohen Chaver knows how to do that. Now, why does he have to leave off something on the side and not just give him oil itself, right? And do the pressing himself and then give the Kohen the oil. The reason that for this baraita is that oil can become tameh. Raw olives cannot become tameh, right? Anything, the olives, while they're connected to the ground, certainly do not become tameh. Even after you harvest them, they are not susceptible to tumah until they get wet with water if you wash them, or with oil when you start pressing them and you want the oil to come out, then they are susceptible. Before you begin the process, they are not susceptible to tumah. So the Mishnah Baraita is saying, take one raw basket of olives and give it to the Kohen, and then you know it's tahor because you didn't process it, didn't become wet, and the Andi can take it. And here's the question: why do you have to bother giving him that raw olives? Why not make the oil and give him oil? We just said in the Mishnah that an Amei Haaretz is trusted regarding oil during the pressing season. And isn't this during the pressing season? So this would seem to contradict, because it says, no, it wouldn't work to give him oil. Why not? And here's the answer. Amar Rav Nachman la kashya, ha becharpeh, ha be'afle. Oh, the Mishnah and the Baraita are talking about two different cases. And in fact, the Mishnah is referring to the early harvest, the harvest that you have at the time of the normal time of pressing, and therefore it can be trusted. It's the time of pressing. So yeah, in that case, I could press the oil, and give tahor oil to a kohen to use as teruma. Ha be'afle, whereas the Baraita is talking about a late harvest. Sometimes they ripen late, after the time of pressing, and only then I'm going to press these, but on off season. And so because it's off season, the Amei Haaretz is not trusted, and that's why the Baraita says give him some raw olives and he can press them himself, and that way they can be tahor. Good. What's a good example of olives that ripen late? He says, like your father's house, he has a lot of olives, and his strains of olives, for some reason, are pressed late in the season, and that would be a good example that you cannot rely on the trustworthiness of the Amei Haaretz at that time. Good. That's all one answer. A second answer. Rav Yosef Amar Begidila Shanu. Oh, maybe that Baraita that says, oh, you have to give them raw olives because you can't trust them. That's talking about in the Galilee, right? Where Amei Haaretz are not trusted all year round. And according to this, they're not trusted regarding Kodesh all year round, and they're not trusted regarding Teruma during the time of pressing in the Galilee. And so the Baraita is talking about the Galilee. Our Mishnah is talking about in Judea, where you can trust him. So in Judea, you can give him the oil. In the Galilee, give him the raw olives. But now we question this second answer. Iti be'abaye. Eber hayarden ba'galil, harehen kihuda. נאמנין על היין בשעת היין ועל השמן בשעת השמן, אבל לא על היין בשעת השמן ולא על השמן בשעת היין. Abaya said, quoted this Baraita saying that the other side of the Jordan and the Galilee are the same as Judea in that Amei Haaretz are trusted regarding wine during the time of wine pressing and regarding oil during the time of oil pressing. Now, side point, they're not going to be trusted regarding wine during the olive press and not regarding oil during the wine press, because these are different times. So each one in its place. But the point is that Amei Haaretz are believed in the Galilee. So you can't tell me that the Galilee is different. This actually makes a lot of sense. What was the only reason that we didn't trust Amei Haaretz regarding Kodesh in the Galilee? Because there's no way to get from the Galilee to Judea with Kodesh, and you have to bring it to Jerusalem. But that doesn't apply to Terumah, because Terumah you don't have to bring to Jerusalem. Terumah you can give to your local Kohen, wherever you are. And so Amei Haaretz in Galilee can give it to their local Kohen. And so they are, in fact, trusted. So we cannot distinguish between the Galilee and the south for Terumah, so we cannot accept Rav Yosef's answer. Rather, we're going to go back to the original answer that we're talking about different times. Olives during the wine press, give the Kohen the oil. Not during the wine press, too late, then give him raw olives. All right, next clause of the Mishnah, Avru hagitot v'abadim, behebi'u lo chavit shel yayin, lo yikabelena hemena, aval manicha legat haba'a. If you're a Kohen who's a chaver, and then an Amei Haaretz brings you a barrel of oil or wine, and it's not during the pressing seasons, too late. So you say you cannot accept it from him. Instead, the farmer Amei Haaretz should hold it in storage until the next time of press, and then give it, and then he can accept it again because he is trusted during the pressing season. All right, good. So we know that the Amei Haaretz can keep it in storage. Now the question is, can the Kohen keep it in storage? Let's say the Kohen accepted it, right? He violated the law, b'di avad, he accepted it. Maybe he didn't realize. So what is it? Does he have to throw it out? Actually, terumah that becomes tameh, you don't have to throw out. You can burn it like oil. You can burn the oil and benefit from light and heat of it, but you can't eat it. So what should he do if he did accept it? How about instead of throwing it out, burning it, maybe he can just keep it in storage. The Kohen keep it in storage until the next wine press, and then what's the time of wine press? Open it up because now he's trustworthy, right? Even though he received it not during the time of wine press, but he opens it during the time of wine press. Is that okay? All right. Well, we have a Mishnah that teaches us this very law. The Mishnah Masechet Demai. חבר בעם הארץ שירשו את אביהם עם הארץ, יכול לומר לו, טול אתה חיטין שבמקום פלוני, ואני חיטין שבמקום פלוני. Okay, so we're going to derive the answer to this. We're not going to end up not being successful. We're going to try to derive an answer from this Mishnah, but it's a long Mishnah, and it's interesting in and of itself. You have a father who was an Amei Haaretz, and he died and left his estate to his two sons. One son is a chaver, one son is an Amei Haaretz. So now they, when he dies, the estate goes into kind of its own entity that's shared by both the brothers. But they don't want to have a share in a joint company. They'd rather split it, and I'll take this and you take that. So when they're splitting it, the way it is when they're in partnership, they all each own an equal share of every species of wheat, wine, barley, and so on. So when they're splitting it, they are permitted to say, you take the chitin in this place, I'll take the wheat in that place. And that way, assuming that the chaver brother knows that the chitin in place A are tahor, and the chitin, the wheat in place B are tameh, so he can say, listen, we have an equal share in all the wheat. Would you mind if I take the wheat that's tahor, and you take the wheat that's tameh, because you're an Amei Haaretz, so you don't care anyway. That's permitted. Because when they split it, so kind of works retroactively. However, they end up splitting it. That's their share. That was their share from the beginning, from the moment that the father died. It's kind of in limbo until they decide to split it, and that's okay. Or you can do tola tayayin shemakom ploni v'ani yayin shemakom ploni. Same thing. Wine in one place that I know is tahor, I'll take that wine. The wine in the other place that's tameh, you take that wine, and that's permitted. here's what you cannot do. You cannot say, I'll take everything that is wet and therefore susceptible to, you take everything that's wet and therefore susceptible to tumah. I'll take everything that's dry and therefore is for sure tahor. Or you take all the chitin, let's say all the wheat is tameh and all the barley is tahor. And so you take all the wheat and I take all the barley. That's not allowed. The reason that's not allowed is because originally, I own half the wheat and you own half the wheat. I own half the barley, you own half the barley. If I say I'm taking all the barley and you're taking all the wheat, then effectively I'm giving you half of the wheat and you are giving me half of the barley. But you are the brother who is an amaretz, and therefore I cannot accept wheat from an amaretz. I cannot accept any food from an amaretz because I have to assume it's tameh once it's in the ownership of the Am Haaretz. And so that's why the first case is permitted, because that wheat, if I take half the wheat, you take half the wheat, my half of the wheat was never under your ownership, because once we decide retroactively, then that is the part that I owned all along. But because we both have ownership in every type of species, if I take all of one species and you take all of the other species, then for sure I'm accepting half of what was owned by you, and you're an amaretz, and therefore I have to assume it's tameh, and so it's no good. Okay, interesting case. Now, Vetani we still didn't get to how this answers the question. We have a braita on this that says, Oto chavez soref halach umeniach hayavesh. If I end up having to take some food that was wet from the amaretz brother, and therefore I have to assume it's tameh. So what do I do with it? I burn that which is tameh, the oil. I can burn it and as a lamp, and whatever is dry, that I can leave and use because it was dry. It's tahor. And now we ask a question: why do I have to burn it? Why can't I just leave it in storage until the next time of oil press, and then I can open it up? So if it were permitted, this is answering Rav Shah's question. His question was, if a kohen did happen to receive some oil not during the time of press, I know that the amaretz could keep it in storage and then give it to me during the time of press, even though same thing. So what about if the kohen keeps it in storage and then opens it up at the time of press? Well, if that were allowed, then in this case, I wouldn't have to burn it. I could just keep it, right? I received it from my brother amaretz. Why burn it? I'll keep it in storage. It's much more valuable as food, salad dressing, whatever. And so I would be able, so the fact that the Mishnah says I have to burn it means that this other solution of keeping it until the time of next press does not work. And so that's the answer to Rav Shash's question. The answer is no. But then we say this is not necessarily an answer, because maybe the Mishnah is talking about B'davar she'en lo gat. Who says it's talking about oil? Could be something that doesn't have a press, like date beer. All right, date beer you might make any time of the year, so there's nothing to wait for that would ever be permitted. Okay, so fine. Let's say, so even if it's something like that, that's not oil or wine that is pressed, maybe it's something else. So leave it to the time of the festival. We're going to see tomorrow, that during the time of a holiday of Yom Tov, we also trust the Amei Haaretz because they're careful during that time of the year. So leave it to the time of the holiday, and then I'll keep it in storage, and then I'll use it. And we answer to that, no, it could be talking about this Mishnah. It could be talking about something that won't last that long, right? Maybe it's 3 months until the holiday starts, and there's something that will not be preserved, that has to be used before that. And that's why it says you have to burn it, destroy it, and not keep it in storage. But it could be that Rav Sheshat's, the answer to Rav Sheshat's question could be yes. Maybe it would be okay to put in storage if it was something else. So this Mishnah Demai is not conclusive, so we leave the question open so that future generations can go and try to figure out other proofs. All right, back to the Mishnah. Someone has a barrel of tirumah. The Am Haaretz is not believed all year round. But if he says, I designated a little bit of it, one revi'it, to be Kodesh, then since he's trustworthy regarding Kodesh, he is trustworthy regarding the entire barrel. Tenan Hatam. Now we're going to compare this to a Mishnah in Ohalot that says, Modim, this is going to come up, our Mishnah is going to come up in this discussion of Ohalot. Modim bet Shammai ubet Hillel shebodkin lo ose Pesach, ben bodkin lo ochle tiruma. This Mishnah says that Bet Shammai agree with Bet Hillel that if we have Pesach, right, I have a Korban Pesach and I want to transfer it betahara. So this is a Kodesh item, and I'm going over a Bet HaPeras. Bet HaPeras is something that was a cemetery. There were bodies buried here, but then someone plowed over it. And so any bodies that were there would have been broken up and scattered. So even though there are no bodies there, so I don't have to worry about tumat ohel, because ohel is only if there's a complete skeleton or a majority, but there still may be some pieces, some bones that may be around. And if I'm walking and my foot happens to move one of the bones, then I will be tameh, and now my Korban Pesach will be tameh. So what am I going to do? So Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel agree that you can check while you're walking and to see if there are any bones, and we permit that. But we do not permit checking for tiruma. So in this case, there's Kodesh is actually more lenient than tiruma. Here's another case. Now, what does it mean bodkin? How do I check to see that there's no bones? There's two ways. My bodkin. I can blow as I walk. I'm not sure if blowing with your mouth is going to reach, but maybe blowing with a fan or a bellows. So as I walk, I'm going to blow everything. And if there are any pieces of bones there, they will blow away. It's kind of like a minesweeper that I have, except this is a bone sweeper. And so that way, even though I'm going through this Bet HaPeras for Korban Pes, I'm holding a Korban, it's okay. I'll make sure that there's nothing in the way. That's way number one. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Mishmei De'ula Amar, Bet HaPeras shenidash tahor leoseh Pesach, lo hamidu dibrehem b'mekom karet. Or another way, Bet HaPeras shenidash. If there was this type of cemetery that was plowed over, but there is an area of it that many people walk through. It's like a thoroughfare. So since people walk there so much, I can assume that any bones that might have been there would already have been kicked out of the way, and therefore this path is clear. And that is permitted for those who are who are bringing Korban Pesach, not only if they're carrying Kodesh, but also they themselves, they want to remain tahor so that they can perform the Korban Pesach. And so they want to make sure that they don't become tameh on the way. For that, we rely on this leniency. Because here's the other side. Let's say, out of safek, I say, maybe you're tameh. This is not good, because then they won't be able to do Korban Pesach. Someone who can do Korban Pesach and doesn't is chayav karet. So therefore, we want to lean on the side of leniency to say the person's tahor, since probably there's no bones here. We don't have to make any bones about it, and we can permit the person to do Korban Pesach, rather than assume, maybe he's tameh, and then he gets karet if he should have brought Korban and he didn't. So that's why we are lenient regarding someone going to do Korban Pesach. However, if someone is holding Tiruma or on their way to eat Tiruma and they want to remain pure, we do not allow them to go through a Bet HaPeras even if they check, because if they are tameh and go ahead and eat tiruma, then they will be chayav mitah. Chayav mitah b'idei shamayim. And so therefore the rabbi is going to be strict. No, Bet HaPeras, there could be a bone here. You might end up moving it and you'll be tameh and then chayav mitah. So therefore better to err on the side of stringency for tiruma and leniency regarding kodesh for Pesach, because if you don't do Korban Pesach, it's even worse. Okay, so now we understand that Mishnah. Ibaya lehu, badak lefischo, mahu sheochal bitrumato. Here's where it's going to connect to our Mishnah. The question is, let's say I walked through a Bet HaPeras and I checked, I was blowing and all that because I'm on my way to do Korban Pesach. So now you say, I'm tahor, good. Now let's say at the same time I say, I'm also going to eat terumah. So because I am assumed to be tahor to do Korban Pesach, So then, can you assume I'm also tahor for terumah? I mean, at least as much. For Korban Pesach, I have to be even a higher level of tahara than for terumah. So since I'm tahor anyway for Pesach, so I should be believed regarding terumah, even though I wouldn't be a tahor if I just went for terumah. So this is why it's a tricky question. We have two opinions, two answers. Ula Amar, Badak lefischo mutar lecho b'trumata. Ula says, yes, it's good enough. Even though if you went through the Bet HaPirash just for terumah, we'd be strict. You can't check. Who knows if there's something there? You might be chayav mitah. But if I went through for Pesach, so if I'm tahor for Pesach, then you have to assume I'm tahor for terumah. Otherwise, it would be just a weird contradiction. Rabba says, no, you can't use this loophole. We don't like this for tirumah. You might be chayav mitah, and therefore, no, you cannot eat tirumah. You can eat a korban pesach, but not tirumah. Okay, Amar lehu Saban, there was an elder there that said, Lo tiflog ale de ula. Do not disagree with ula, the first opinion that is lenient. Why? Because look at our Mishnah. It's brilliant to connect these two cases. Our Mishnah says, although an Ama'aretz is not believed regarding Terumah, but is trusted regarding Kodesh, and nevertheless, if you mix the two together, since there's a little bit of Revi'it of Kodesh, since he's trusted regarding that Revi'it of Kodesh, we trust him regarding the entire thing. So therefore, we can apply the same principle here. Alma. Because he's trusted regarding the Kodesh within the barrel, we trust him also regarding Terumah. Here too in our case, because he's trustworthy to be tahor, to eat Korban Pesach, so too he is trustworthy to eat terumah because he went for it's the same traveling, and therefore ula is proven by our Mishnah. All right, that was fun. Okay, now regarding the last clause of the Mishnah regarding barrels of wine and oil that are mixed together. What does this mean? What kind of mixture is this? Okay, so first we're going to quote a Braita, and then we'll connect it to our Mishnah. Tana. En ne'emanin lo ala kankanim velo ala teruma. So the Braita says, Amei Haaretz are not believed regarding jugs and not on teruma. Okay, this is a strange formulation, right? Not jugs and not teruma. Jugs of what? Are they empty jugs, open jugs? Is it jugs themselves and teruma? So we don't know. So we ask, kankanim de mai, what kind of jugs? Kankanim de kodesh, migo de mehman kodesh, kankanim. If they are jugs that are used for kodesh, sacrificial, consecrated wine, oil. Well, if they're trusted regarding the kodesh itself, then they should also be trusted regarding the jugs, right? Because either there's kodesh in it, or there was kodesh in it, or you're going to put kodesh in it, whatever it is, they are trustworthy. It's part of the process of how you're holding the kodesh. So why would it be law, right? Not trustworthy. So it can't be talking about kodesh. Ela kankanim de terumah. Must be it's talking about jugs that are used with terumah. If that's so, pishita, isn't that obvious? Hashta teruma la meheman, akankanim meheman. If they're not trusted regarding teruma food, then they shouldn't be trusted regarding the jugs either. In other words, either way, the jugs should be the same as the status of the food. If it's kodesh, believe them. If trust them. If it's teruma, don't trust them. So what is this? What are these kankanim that we don't trust Amei Haaretz? Ela berekanin de kodesh ubeshad yemot hashana ubemelein de teruma. Rather, you know what it's talking about? It's talking about empty jugs that are designated for Kodesh all year round. So yes, while it's true that Kodesh oil or wine itself, the Amei Haaretz will be careful, but they may not be as careful with the jugs when the jugs are empty. And so therefore you can't trust them. That's why it says kankanim. And the other part, this is al tiruma. Well, since it says tiruma, but the context is jugs, it's talking about jugs that are full of teruma, even at the time of the wine press. Well, okay, now while they're actually full, then we trust them regarding the contents. So the whole thing will be tahor. But if you empty them out, then they will be tameh, even during the time of the wine press. And so empty jugs are not the same as full jugs. That's how we understand this baraita. All right, good. Now, what does it have to do with us? Oh, we have a question. Tanan kadei yain vechadei shemen hamedumaot. Our Mishnah was talking about jugs of wine and jugs of oil that are mixed. Mixed, what kind of mixture? Maila medumaot ditruma. So is it that they are mixed with tiruma? And here it says that the Amma Aretz is believed, is trusted regarding this jug with that's a mixture of tiruma. A mixed tiruma, we can also say is tebel. Tebel means produce that I just harvested that I didn't take the teruma out yet. So it's a mixture of chulin and teruma. And so if so, our Mishnah said that the Amma Aretz is believed during the wine press and 70 days before if there's a mixture of teruma in it. Regarding the jugs, it's talking about jugs. So this would seem to contradict our baraita. Amre de Bichia medumaot de kodesh. The Gemara answers based on the Bichia. We're talking about a mixture of kodesh, some kodesh and chulin mixed in it. That's what the baraita is talking about when it says that we do not believe them. Okay. Umika dimua la kodesh. Wait, does the word dimua can that apply to kodesh? The word dimua medumaat is by the definition of it is a mixture of tiruma. We don't use that word for a mixture of kodesh. Talking about tebel that was not yet taken out. So we don't accept this. And the final answer is these jugs are full of tebel. That's why it's called medumaot, because they have in there tiruma and chulin that weren't yet separated. But here's the thing. If it was simply tebel, just teruma, then I would believe them during the time of wine press, but not otherwise. But this case is different because I have kept these. The Amma Aretz kept it in a level of high level of kodesh because he intends to take some nesachim from it, right? Even though he didn't say yet, I'm going to take a revit of kodesh yet. If he said, I'm going to take a revit of kodesh right now, I'm designated revit of kodesh, then he'd believe all year round. That was the previous case. But if he says, I'm going to treat this dimua at the level of kodesh because I'm going to one day take nesech from it, in that case, it has an in-between status. And we trust the Amma Aretz in this case regarding teruma during the wine press and 70 days before, because already 70 days before, they're starting the process of gathering together all of the vessels to purify them. And so that is the explanation of the last clause in the Mishnah. All right, and just another last note about the final few words. Kodem legitot shiv'im yom. The Mishnah mentioned that in this case of this mixture, we trust the Amma Aretz not only during wine press, but even 70 days before, right? Because there's a potential of kodesh in it. Amad Abaye shema mina dinahu de'ilaveh arisa lemitrach agulfe shivim yomin mikame ma'asarta. We can learn from here another halacha altogether that a tenant farmer is required to start preparing his jugs to hold the wine 70 days before the wine press. Right? As a tenant farmer, there's a financial obligation that the owner of the field can place upon him that 70 days before you better start because you have to be ready to have enough flasks for everything. And how do we know that? Well, since this Mishnah said that he's trustworthy 70 days before, regarding jugs, that must mean that already 70 days before the jugs are being prepared, and so the tenant farmer is required to make that financial preparation for the jugs. And that is the conclusion of the Mishnah. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.